Hello and welcome to part 3 of The Hobbit. We are on chapter 1. The dark came into the room from the little window that opened in the side of the hill. The firelight flickered. It was April, and still they played on, while the shadow of Gandalf's beard wagged against the wall. The dark filled all the room, and the fire died down, and the shadows were lost as they played on. And suddenly first one, then another, began to sing as they played deep-throated singing of the dwarves in the deep places of their ancient homes. And this is like a fragment of their song, if it can be like a song without their music. Far over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns old, we must away ere break of day to seek the pale enchanted gold. The dwarves of yore made mighty spells, while hammers fell like ringing bells in places deep where dark things sleep, in hollow halls beneath the fells. For ancient king and elvish lord, there many a gleaming, glowing horde they shaped and wrought, and light they caught to hide in gems on hilt of sword. On silver necklaces they strung the flowering stars, on crowns they hung the dragon fire, in twisted wire they meshed the light of moon and sun. Far over the misty mountain cold, to dungeons deep and caverns old, we must away ere break of day to claim our long forgotten gold. Goblets they carve there for themselves, and harps of gold where no man dwells. There lay they long, and many a song was sung unheard by men or elves. The pines were roaring on the height, the winds were moaning in the night. The fire was spread, it flaming spread, it trees like torches blazed with light. The bells were ringing in the dale, then men with faces pale, the dragon's ire, more fierce than fire, laid low their towers and houses frail. The mountain smoked beneath the moon, the dwarves they heard the tramp of doom. They fled their hall to dying fall beneath his feet, beneath the moon. Far o'er the misty mountains grim, to dungeons deep and caverns dim, we must away ere break of day, to win our hearts and gold from him. As they sang, the hobbit fell in love, felt the love of beautiful things made by hands, and by cunning, and by magic moving through him, a fierce and jealous love, the desire at the hearts of dwarves. Then something tookish woke up inside him, and he wished to go and see the great mountains, and hear the pine trees and the waterfalls, and explore caves, and wear a sword instead of a walking stick. He looked out the window. Stars were out in the sky above the trees, and he thought of the jewels of the dwarves shining in dark caverns. Suddenly, in the wood beyond the water, a flame leapt up, probably somebody lighting a wood fire, and he thought of plundering dragons settling on his quiet hill and kindling all into flames. He shuddered, and very quickly he was plain Mr. Baggins of Bag End, Underhill again. He got up trembling. He had less than half a mind to fetch the lamp, and more than half a mind to pretend to, and go hide behind the beer barrels in the cellar, and not come out again until all the dwarves had gone away. Suddenly, he found the music and singing had stopped, and they were all looking at him with eyes shining in the dark. "Where are you going?" said Thorin, in a tone that seemed that he had guessed both halves of the hobbit's mind. "What about a little light?" said Bilbo apologetically. "We like the dark," said the dwarves. "Dark for dark business. There are many hours before dawn." Of course," said Bilbo, and sat down in a hurry. He missed the stool and sat on the fender, knocking over the poker and shovel with a crash. "Hush!" said Gandalf. "Let Thorin speak." And this is how Thorin began. "Gandalf, dwarves, and Mr. Baggins, we are met together in the house of our friend and fellow conspirator, this most excellent and audacious hobbit. May the hair on his toes never fall out. All praise to his wine and ale." He paused for a breath, and for a polite remark from the hobbit, but the compliments were quite lost on poor Bilbo Baggins, who was wagging his mouth in protest at being called audacious, and worst of all, fellow conspirator, though no noise come out, he was so flummoxed. So Thorin went on. "We are met here to discuss our plans and our ways and means and policies and devices. We shall soon, before the break of day, start on a long journey, a journey from which some of us, or perhaps all of us, except for our friend and counselor, the ingenious wizard Gandalf, may never return. It is a solemn moment. Our object is, I take it, well known to us all. To the estimable Mr. Baggins, and perhaps to one or two of the younger dwarves, I think I should be right in naming Feely and Keely, for instance, the exact situation at this moment may require a little brief explanation. This was Thorin's style. He was an important dwarf. If he was to be allowed, he would probably have gone on like this until he was quite out of breath, without telling anyone anything that was not known already. But he was rudely interrupted. Poor Bilbo couldn't bear it any longer. At the "may never return," he began to feel a shriek coming up inside, and very soon it burst out like a whistle of an engine coming out of a tunnel. All the dwarves sprang up, knocking over the table. Gandalf struck a blue light on the end of his magic staff, and in its firework glare the poor little hobbit could be seen kneeling on the hearth, shaking like jelly that was melting. Then he fell flat on the floor and kept on calling out, "Struck by lightning! Struck by lightning!" over and over again, and that was all they could get out of him for a long time. So they took him and laid him out in a way on the drawing room sofa with a drink at his elbow and went back to their dark business. "Excitable little fellow," said Gandalf as he sat down again. "Gets funny queer fits, but he's one of the best, and as fierce as a dragon in a pinch." If you have ever seen a dragon in a pinch, you will realize this was not only poetical exaggeration applied to any hobbit, even to old Took's great-grandfather Bull-Roarer, who was so huge for a hobbit that he could ride a horse. He charged the ranks of the goblins at the Mount Graham in the Battle of the Green Fields and knocked their king Glowfimble's head clean off with a wooden club. It sailed 100 yards through the air and went down a rabbit hole, and in this way the battle was won, and the game of golf was invented at the same moment. In the meanwhile, however, Bull-Roarer's gentler descendant was reviving in the drawing room. After a while and a drink, he crept nervously to the door of the parlor. That's when he heard Glowin speak, or some sort of noise like that. "Will he do you think? It is all very well for Gandalf to talk about this hobbit being fierce, but one shriek like that in a moment of excitement would be enough to wake the dragon and all his relatives and kill us, the lot of us. I think it sounded more like fright than excitement. In fact, if I had not seen the sign on the door, I should have been sure he had come to the wrong house. As soon as I clapped eyes on the little fellow puffing and bobbing on the mat, I had my doubts. He looks more like a grocer than a burglar." Then Mr. Baggins turned and handle and went in. The Took side had won. He suddenly felt he would go without bed and breakfast to be thought fierce. As for little fellow on the mat, it almost made him really fierce. Many a time afterwards, the Baggins part regretted what he did now, and he said to himself, "Bilbo, you were a fool, and you walked right into it and put your foot in it." "Pardon me," he said, "if I have overheard words that you were saying. I don't pretend to understand what you are talking about, or the reference to burglars, but I think I am right in believing," that is what he called being in his dignity, "that you think I am no good. I will show you I have no signs on my door. It was painted a week ago, and I am quite sure you have come to the wrong house. As soon as I saw your funny faces on the doorstep, I had my doubts, but treat it as the right one. Tell me what you want done, and I will try it. If I have to walk from here to the east of East and fight the wild were-worms in the last desert, if I had a great-great-great-granduncle once, Bull-Roarer Took, and—" Yes, a long time ago," said Glowin. "I was talking about you. And I assure you there is a mark on the door, the usual one in the trade, or used to be. Burglar, wants a job, plenty of excitement and reasonable reward. That's how it usually reads. You can say expert treasure hunter instead of burglar if you like. Some of them do. It's all the same to us. Gandalf told us there was a man of the sorts in this part looking for a job at once, and that he had arranged for a meeting here this Wednesday, tea time." "Of course there is a mark," said Gandalf. "I put it there myself for very good reasons. You asked me to find a 14th man for your little expedition, and I chose Mr. Baggins. Just let anyone say I chose the wrong man or the wrong house, and you can stop at 13 and have all the bad luck you like and go back to digging coal." He scowled so angrily at Glowin, and the dwarf huddled back into his chair. And when Bilbo tried to open his mouth to ask a question, he turned and frowned at him and stuck out his bushy eyebrows, till Bilbo shut his mouth tight with a snap. "That's right," said Gandalf. "Let's have no more argument. I have chosen Mr. Baggins, and that ought to be enough for the lot of you. If he is a burglar, then burglar he is or will be when the time comes. There's a lot more to him than you guess, and a deal more than he has any idea of himself. You shall, possibly, all live to thank me. Now, Bilbo, my boy, fetch the lamp, and let's have a little light on this." There we'll stop for now. If you want to see what they show in the light, tune in for part 4. Thank you for watching Roleplay Riot.